Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, picture the mid-19th century. We're talking horse-drawn carriages, expanding frontiers, and American streets that are becoming deeply, dangerously divided. Today, we're looking back at all of that to examine a truly haunting historical question. How exactly do the personal tragedies of a single leader ripple out to affect an entire country? We're going to explore the life of America's 14th president, Franklin Pierce. And as we dig into the historical records, you'll see how his unimaginable personal sorrow actually helped push a fracturing nation right to the brink of civil war. It's a massive story of great promise, unthinkable pain, and a presidency that completely unraveled at the exact moment the country needed a steady hand.
You know, history teaches us a pretty profound lesson. The destiny of a country isn't just shaped by grand policies, sprawling wars, or huge economic shifts. It's shaped by the deeply human and sometimes deeply fragile people actually holding the pen. Sometimes a leader's weakness can change the direction of an entire nation. That quote perfectly captures the essence of our explainer today. We so often view presidents as these untouchable figures, right? Cast in bronze or marble. But history proves over and over that personal fragility can alter a nation's destiny in massive ways. Franklin Pierce was a man who tried to hold a breaking country together while he himself was completely broken.
Section 1. The Rising Political Star. Okay, let's dive right into this, because to understand his tragic fall, we first really need to understand his incredible rise. It's honestly fascinating how fast this guy climbed the political ladder. Born in 1804 up in New Hampshire, he was the son of a Revolutionary War soldier. He was incredibly sharp, too. He went to Bowdoin College, where he actually struck up a lifelong friendship with the famous writer Nathaniel Hawthorne. And Hawthorne noted something incredibly insightful about Pierce even back then. He said his friend had undeniably strong leadership qualities, but beneath all that charm, there was a deep, hidden sensitivity. From those college years on, Pierce's rise was just meteoric. He studied law, moved into the local legislature, hit the U.S. Congress at just 28 years old, and shortly after that became the youngest member of the U.S. Senate.
During those early years, his reputation was absolutely stellar. He wasn't just another politician. He was known as a highly influential speaker with this genuinely rare gift for remembering faces and names. He had a natural, energetic ability to connect with voters on a really personal level. People looked at him and saw this bright, dynamic leader who could effortlessly bridge divides. By all accounts, he was a rising star in American politics, a man whose easy charm basically seemed to guarantee a legacy of triumph.
Section 2. Unthinkable Family Tragedy. And guys, here is where Pierce's story takes a sudden, dark turn. While his political star was rising, his personal life became a continuous sequence of tragedies. 3. It's such a simple number, right? But here, it represents a weight of loss that is almost impossible to comprehend. Franklin and his wife Jane had 3 sons, and one by one they suffered the unimaginable agony of losing every single one of them. Their first son died in infancy, their second son caught typhus and passed away at just 4 years old. So by the time Franklin Pierce was running for president, they had poured literally all of their remaining love and hope into their third son, an 11-year-old boy named Benny.
Then, the absolute worst happened in early 1853. Literally just weeks before Pierce was scheduled to be inaugurated as the 14th president, the family was traveling by train in Massachusetts and the train derailed. The passenger car tumbled down a steep embankment. Now, Franklin and Jane survived with relatively minor injuries, but their third and final surviving son, Benny, was killed instantly, right in front of them. It is a cinematic, completely unthinkable tragedy, and the timing, striking right on the eve of his presidency, it completely shattered both him and his wife.
Why is God punishing us? Just, wow. That quote from Jane Pierce is utterly heartbreaking, but it anchors us in the raw human emotion and the severe trauma they carried with them into the highest office in the land. Jane was so overcome with grief she didn't even attend the inauguration, and Franklin Pierce? He was so devastated, he actually refused to swear the presidential oath on a Bible because he honestly believed God had abandoned him. He just affirmed his oath on a law book instead. They weren't walking into the White House with a sense of triumph. They were totally enveloped in profound grief.
Section 3. A broken president. So 1853 rolls around, and he officially becomes the 14th president, but the man taking the reins of the country was already psychologically shattered.
And this brilliantly illustrates that tragic shift. Look at the stark contrast. The early Franklin Pierce, a charismatic, influential speaker who absolutely thrived on connecting with voters. But President Franklin Pierce? He was severely depressed,
totally isolated from his peers, and, according to the historical accounts, heavily battling alcoholism just to cope with the immense daily pain. The vibrant leader the country thought they had elected was practically gone, replaced by a grieving father who was merely going through the motions of the presidency.
Section 4. The Kansas-Nebraska Act. It's exactly that compromised mental and emotional state we have to keep in mind when looking at his most controversial and disastrous policy decision. So the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. Why was this so explosive? Well, powerful Southern senators were aggressively demanding that new Western territories be open to slavery. Pierce, completely lacking the emotional fortitude and energy to push back against his own party, basically just caved. He threw his support behind this act. The law essentially left the deeply explosive issue of slavery up to local choice, a concept known as popular sovereignty. The residents of the territories would decide for themselves if they'd be a free or slave state. Pierce probably thought this was a neat compromise, an exhausted man's way to keep the peace. But he miscalculated, drastically. Because this policy built into a national catastrophe almost overnight. Once the act passed, pro-slavery and anti-slavery factions didn't just peacefully move there to vote. No, they aggressively rushed across the borders into Kansas specifically to sway the outcome by any means necessary. This instantly ignited extreme violence, a really dark period known as Bleeding Kansas. People were literally killing each other in the streets, burning down towns, forming rival governments. Pierce's attempt at a tired compromise acted like pouring gasoline on a fire. It pushed a deeply divided America even further apart.
Section 5. Sectional Violence and Downfall. As you can imagine, with violence totally raging in Kansas, his political support completely collapsed.
The political fallout was swift and brutal. Pierce was increasingly accused of favoring Southern pro-slavery states, mostly because he recognized the pro-slavery legislature in Kansas despite obvious voter fraud. That deepened the national divide for sure. Plus, his total inability to halt the bloodshed caused his public popularity to plummet to historic lows. The ultimate consequence? By the 1856 election, his own political party completely abandoned him. They handed him a massive political defeat by refusing to even nominate him for a second term, going with James Buchanan instead. To this day, Pierce is the only elected president to be actively denied his party's nomination for a second term.
Section 6. A Tragic Historical Legacy. Looking at the historical records, Pierce's departure from Washington is just incredibly lonely. He left office a rejected leader of a broken nation.
Those final years were terribly bleak. Without the incredible demands of the presidency to distract him, his personal grief just completely took over. He lost his wife Jane shortly after leaving office and sank further into alcoholism and isolation. Franklin Pierce died in 1869. He was only 64 years old. Today, historians frequently rank him among the least successful presidents, pointing out how his policies directly accelerated the Civil War. But when you look at the full picture of his life, it's really hard not to see it as a profound human tragedy. A man completely crushed by personal grief, tragically tasked with managing a fracturing nation. Which really leaves us with this final, lingering question. As we look back at the chaos of the 1850s, we have to ask, can the unhealed personal trauma of one leader ultimately break an entire nation? Franklin Pierce's story is a stark reminder of the immense cost of broken leadership and a pretty profound lesson on how human fragility shapes our history. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Take some time to reflect on that and keep seeking out the incredible human stories hidden right behind the grand sweep of historical data.